Hello all, and welcome to Astro Wheel of Fortune. My name is Vlada and I read tarot, and today I am doing a reading on the Temperance card. So this is another video in the series Tarot by Tarot, where I do a channeled reading on each of the major arcana cards. So if you haven't watched the rest of the series, I highly recommend that you go and watch that first, because each card kind of ends up informing the next one. So it makes sense to watch this series from the start. But today we're getting into the Temperance card. I'm really excited to get into this card, mainly because of what I read about this card in this book. If you have been following this series, you know that I'm using this book, The Tarot, History, Symbolism, and Divination by Robert M. Place. And this book kind of inspired this series. So, yeah, if you are all caught up and you want to start with, get into the reading with me here with the Temperance card, then stick around. If you haven't, I recommend you watch the other videos first before you come to the Temperance. So let's get into it. We're gonna start doing this reading on the Temperance card. But something that I want to do is I really do feel called to read from the book first, and then we'll start the reading, because there were so many things that came up in this that I thought were very noteworthy and very interesting. So let's see. So first of all, I wanted to start with the fact that Temperance is the last card in the second act of the major arcana, and the Temperance card is trumping Death card. So if you haven't watched the Death card video, go watch it. It's on the playlist that I have on my channel. It's called Tarot by Tarot. And the Temperance card representing the virtue of temperance. What it says here in the book is, often when faced with death and suffering, which is like the Hanged Man and the Death card especially represent that element of death and suffering and grief. Often when faced with death and suffering, one may become wrathful or angry with the apparent unfairness of life. And that's where the Temperance card comes in. In Renaissance allegories, temperance was commonly the virtue that was depicted conquering wrath. And she is in the same position in the trumps. So the energy of temperance, this very balanced, this very peaceful, this very moderate energy, is the powerful energy that trumps death, that trumps grief, that trumps the suffering. And another thing that I thought was very interesting that he mentions in this book is, I will come back to this, but it's in the Rider-Waite part, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck part, where he mentions that the angelic figure whom Waite acknowledges is neither masculine nor feminine, has red and violet wings, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's interesting that that was specifically pointed out, that this figure on the Temperance card is not meant to represent a gender, which again is so interesting because it's such an energy of balance. It's an energy of the midpoint. It's the energy of tempering, contrasting, and polar energies. So in the lack of polarity in the Temperance card, there's also a lack of polarity of gender. So I thought that was very interesting with the Temperance card. Another thing that I thought was very funny, in the book he mentions, it is often suggested that temperance was depicted mixing water with wine to avoid getting drunk. And of course we know temperance can represent, the word temperance can often mean someone who knows how to abstain from drinking, etc. So I thought that was pretty funny. That's in the earlier, not in the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot. This is more so in the earlier iterations of tarot. But also, so the other thing that I found very, 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 very interesting, and I really want to look at that, and it's something that I want to research. So what it says here, let me just read this part out. In Renaissance, however, temperance of attitude and emotion was considered to be dependent on the proper balance of the four humors. which were believed to be the vital liquids in the body: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. This connection between the humors and the temperament is still part of our language. For example, when we say that someone is melancholy, we are saying that they have too much black bile, which in Latin is actually called melancholia. Likewise, when these four liquids are in proper balance, we are said to have a good temperament, which is derived from the Latin temperamentum, which means correct mixture. I thought that was so interesting, and I actually looked up the medical, thing associated with that back in the day, way back in the day. Romans and Greeks used it, and it's called humorism. And like it says in the book, it's black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. And it's all about balancing those four mixtures, and how our moods are connected to those four mixtures. So what I looked up, black bile was basically if you had too much black bile, as it said in the book, you had melancholy. If you had too much yellow bile, you were irritable. And I think it was called like caloric. And then the blood was a sanguine temperament. So basically that you're optimistic and you're positive. And the phlegm was that you're calm and peaceful. And I actually looked up the definition of phlegm. I actually didn't realize this. And I looked up the definition of phlegm days before I started doing this reading, and I don't know why. I was writing something. I was like writing a poem or something like that, and I was looking for synonyms, I think, for calm and peaceful, and I think I saw phlegm, and I thought that was so interesting. And the fact that it came up today when I'm doing the temperance card as well, I thought that was just like such a cool synchronicity. Phlegm can be a state of peace or being relaxed and able to take things on when you're in a state of phlegm. So I thought that was so cool and interesting, and how that correlated with what it said in the book. And when I looked up this process or understanding or study of humorism from like Roman and Greek times, and I think they even used it in medieval times. I think they say it in the book. But then it was disproven because of bacteria and new findings. But I also think, based on what we've learned and what I've learned through this Major Arcana series, and how, do you remember when in the Justice card, we kind of talked about how we always have to come back to our traditions. We'll have to look back on our traditions, even with our newfound knowledge, even with our new understanding of things. We cannot move forward in life without going back and looking at our traditions, even if our traditions that we escaped and that we moved on from and that we rebelled from, even if they weren't 100% correct, we are able to see a certain level of truth in those traditions. That's what it kind of reminded me of, because thinking of this, four liquids being tempered in our body, allowing for a good temperament, something about it resonated. And yes, it may not be scientifically completely true with the scientific knowledge and everything that we know right now about life and about medicine and about health, but maybe there's something there worth exploring in terms of health and healing, in order to give us perspective on our modern way of approaching medicine and healing. And so I was thinking about the Temperance card in a way that I never thought of it before. In a way, when we look at the Temperance card, it is the card of healing, but healing through balance rather than healing through, taking medicine, or through healing through time, or healing through when we think of healing, we think of like some sort of like proactive thing to do in order to heal, whereas the Temperance energy is very much like allow things to balance on their own in order to heal. That's what I was kind of thinking of even before we begin this reading. It's just something that was standing out for me with the Temperance card. So let's get into the Temperance card though and see what it actually wants to say to us today when we're doing this reading. Again, like I've said in a couple of the videos, it's not necessarily that this is all that the Temperance card means. I am just looking at these cards from a perspective of like, what do they want to say to us right now? What is that thing that the Temperance card wants to express to us right now as I'm doing this reading, as you're coming across this reading? So let's get into it. So we've got the King of Wands. I'm not reading reversals for these readings, as a lot of you know. So we're just taking the King of Wands in the upright position. Which is interesting because King of Wands is a fire sign energy and the Temperance card is connected to the sign of Sagittarius. Another thing that I thought was interesting that I read in the book, I won't even get the book out to read it, but I'll show you. So in the Temperance card, in the Rider-Waite-Smith, they have like a halo around this angel's head, but the halo is meant to represent the sun rather than having like a crown. And in the back, you can see the sun rising over the mountains. But what I didn't realize is that the sun is actually the crown. If you can see, there's like a crown shape to the sun. And that is actually on purpose because this is meant to represent our connection with our internal and external world and how connected they are and how we need to balance those things in order to function properly. So the sun is actually on the head of the figure and the crown is behind the figure, behind the mountains. And I thought that was very interesting as well with the Temperance card. I want to pull another card, if I'm honest, with the Temperance card because I'm getting this urge to pull another card. Okay, we've got the Ten of Cups. Okay, let's have a look. The sun symbol actually is also on the forehead. If you see in astrology, the sun symbol is this, the circle with the dot in the middle. So the sun is strongly connected. It's funny because the sun is so prominent in the Temperance card, and I didn't really even like grasp that before. And what's funny now that I'm seeing the Ten of Cups, the Ten of Cups, of course, has a rainbow. In some early versions of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, they had a rainbow behind the angel, which was then taken out. The book didn't give the reason, but there was a rainbow behind the angel. But what's interesting is that the flower Iris, which is a goddess, she is the kind of like female counterpart to Hermes. She's like a messenger between heaven and earth. Iris is also connected to the rainbow in mythology. So they took out the rainbow, but they have irises in the illustration of the Temperance card. So I think that's so funny that the only card with the rainbow came out when in some of the iterations of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, they had the rainbow in the back. So, okay, let's get into the reading. So I feel like with the Temperance card, first thing that I'm really, really getting is this leadership quality that the Temperance card has that maybe we don't give it enough credit from that leader-like point of view. And what I'm getting with the Temperance card is that when the Temperance card comes out in a reading, it is showing us that we can take control, we are capable of taking the lead, that we have the strength, that we have, no matter how grief-stricken we are, no matter how much we have suffered, no matter how difficult the suffering was, we still have that energy of being able to balance things out, even if we're not going to be able to balance things out immediately, even though we're not going to be able to make things happy and delightful and beautiful right away, right in that moment. The Temperance card reminds us that we have enough mastery of the intention, because the King of Wands is a master of intention. We have mastered our intention enough that even with the suffering and even with the grief that we are experiencing post hanged man and death energy, we have enough mastery over our intention to keep going and to slowly temper ourselves, to slowly balance ourselves out to the point where we're able to move forward into a much happier place. The Temperance card is this energy of, in this reading, the way that the Temperance card is coming across is someone who, have you ever had someone come to you even when you were little, or like, I don't know if I've had this exact experience that I'm being shown. I don't think I have, but the feeling that I'm getting, I feel like maybe I've seen it in movies. I don't know if it's when someone comes to you gently with a lot of compassion, a lot of love, a lot of empathy, but they basically tell you, okay, it's time to stop wallowing in self-pity. And they don't say it with this malicious, angry tone. They don't say it in a negative kind of way. They say it with a sense of like, you know, you deserve better than sitting in your self-pity. You know you deserve better. And that's so funny because that reminds me of Sagittarian energy, which is so closely connected with the Temperance card. Also, the word for rainbow in Hebrew, which I don't remember right now, it's in the book, is the same word they use for Sagittarius, which I thought was super cool as well. Yeah, it says the word for rainbow, or in Hebrew, the word for rainbow is tav shin kof. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm really sorry if I'm not. And it's the same word that is used in ancient Hebrew for the sign of Sagittarius. So rainbows in the sign of Sagittarius. I wonder if there's more connections that, you know, could be found. But anyway, this is reminding me of that optimism with Sagittarius. Well, Sagittarius can sometimes be seen as very blunt and very harsh and very honest. In truth, Sagittarius energy can be very peaceful and quiet. Why does it have all this wisdom? Why does it have all this understanding of the world? You know, Sagittarians are seekers of wisdom. Sagittarian energy is very much all about seeking wisdom, seeking knowledge, seeking the truth. But it doesn't mean that they always do it in this like reckless, harsh way. Yes, obviously some energy might manifest itself in that kind of way, but the true energy of Sagittarius is not that they are harsh or blunt or even angry in any sort of way with their truth. The true nature of Sagittarius is that they seek the truth, full stop. And the truth sometimes has to be faced even if it feels harsh, because sometimes, and I feel like that's what the Temperance card is wanting us to remember when it comes out in a reading, sometimes the truth is coming at you in the most diplomatic, the most peaceful, the most calm sort of way possible. And we will still see it as harsh, or we will still see it as blunt, because the truth, the nature of truth is that, no matter how the truth is presented, if you are sitting in under a veil of delusion, if you are under a smokescreen of delusion or self-pity or martyrdom or suffering even, yes, there's a sense of like, sometimes the harshest thing can actually be the most peaceful thing that can happen to you. Sometimes the harshest word can actually be the most helpful thing for you to get out of suffering. And while in the moment it might feel like this harsh truth or this blunt truth is adding to your suffering, in truth, it's cutting through that suffering. And in order for something to cut through something, it needs to have a level of sharpness. And so the Temperance card is kind of like, don't be fooled by the softness of the energy of balance and moderation and being able to temper yourself, and like this energy of temperance, because sometimes something can be tempered. It's kind of like, okay, a tempered person. Let's say a tempered person, someone who's very wise, someone who is in balance. You know, their black bile, their yellow bile, their blood, and their phlegm. It's all balanced, and their temperament is good, and they are highly respected. They're highly valued. They're very wise. And they're calm in nature, and they have this like self-awareness and self-control that they possess that is incredible. And a lot of people, naturally, you would respect a person like that, someone who has that kind of level of self-control, but not just self-control, also just understanding of themselves, compassion for themselves, but also a sense of accountability. A truth from that person could hurt so much more than from someone who is not tempered, someone whose temperament is all over the place, and they're chaotic and they're angry and they're screaming. Truth from that person may not feel as hurtful as from someone who's in this like wise tempered energy, because you know the person who is delivering the truth when they're in their wise and tempered energy is delivering it from an utmost place of authenticity and truth, and they're not just saying it to say it. They're not lashing out. They're not saying it to be manipulative. They're saying it because it is the truth. This reminds me of like, I remember I had this teacher in school. She was our English teacher, and I always noticed how she had a really good control on our class. You know, like sometimes teachers have like difficulties controlling the noise, and like they don't get very respected. And this teacher that I had in school, she was very tempered. I would say she was very tempered. She knew how to... She was so sure in her own energy, and she was so sure of what she was teaching and how she was teaching it. Even the people that usually would kind of... My class wasn't too crazy at the same time, but there was definitely classes where certain people were acting out a lot more in the class. But in her class, no one ever acted out. And it wasn't because people were afraid of her. It wasn't because people were, like, the kids in the class were... terrified that she was gonna like report them or anything like that. It's because she presented herself in a way that was very tempered, that was very wise, and it was very easy to be engaged in her class because of her own energy. And this is kind of what... But you would be devastated. I don't know. I would have been devastated if she called me out on something. Or I presume, or I feel like a lot of people or a lot of kids in that class would have felt that way, because even the kids that used to act out like in other classes would be very respectful in her class. And I think it's because this teacher, you could tell she had so much self-respect. She had such deep respect for herself, in such a intentional and calculated, not in a cold calculated, but like you could tell she spent years cultivating this self-respect, that it made everyone else respect her as well. And I feel like, and I always like, sometimes I'm reminded of that teacher, and just something about how she carried herself was so resonant, right? So I just feel like this is the energy of temperance. It's having that level of self-respect for yourself. I wonder if sometimes the temperance card can come out in a reading to call you out, to say you should have more self-respect than that. That could be an element of the temperance card for sure. That I'm picking up on. But it could also indicate like, how can you have the most self-respect in this situation possible? How can you have the utmost self-respect for yourself that other people can't help but respect you too? And I am getting that kind of energy with the Temperance card, where it calls upon you that when you're stricken with grief, and maybe even if you're grieving, even if you're in a place where you are processing your suffering, you're processing the sadness that you have within you, or the loss that you feel within you, the nothingness that you feel. Like we said in the death card, we talked about the nothingness, right? The Temperance card feels like it comes in to say, okay, you felt the nothingness, you felt the grief, you allowed yourself to unravel, you've allowed yourself to, become messy, because it's an important step in the grieving process where you need to be allowed to be messy, where you need to be allowed to unravel and to, I guess, like, feel the full extent of grief in a way that may not be the most beautiful or the most appealing or the most presentable. But at a certain point, it's important to say to yourself, okay, you've had your messy moment. You messy queen. You've had your messy moment. Now have enough self-respect to pick yourself back up and build yourself up again. That's the feeling that I'm getting with the Temperance card. And there's a certain level of optimism that comes with that, because now, even though you've gone through this grief, you have the ability to build yourself up again. You have the ability to pick yourself up and to do something with this grief from a point of view where you moderate this grief into something more balanced. And the Temperance card is not talking about like starting to make action straight away, is what I'm feeling here. It's not about action. It's about getting yourself out of the grief-stricken, messy place. That nothingness that we talked about in the death card. What I'm feeling is like the Temperance card is about taking yourself out of that messy energy or that nothing energy, because nothingness can be chaos. When there's nothing, there's so much that you can project onto nothing. There's so much that you can intend and conceptualize with nothing. That's kind of the point of the death card when we were talking about it. The Temperance card is kind of like, okay, let's get ourselves out of that, nothing where we're intending and conceptualizing things. Let's get ourselves out of there and let's just temper ourselves with what we have at hand, what's happening. And honestly, I am getting with the Temperance card, let's start being optimistic here. We've suffered, we've wallowed, we've felt like a martyr, we felt like a victim. Allow yourself to feel like a victim. That's the point of the Hanged Man. Allowing yourself to feel, Jesus, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm in such a bad spot. Let me just feel my full discomfort. So in a way, what I'm picking up is very interesting. I think the Hanged Man is the need to succumb to pessimism. And the Temperance card is the need to succumb to optimism. And the death card is the nothingness in between. Oh my God. And this proves my theory because, oh my God. Okay, so my theory is that Jupiter actually rules both pessimism and optimism. It's not just optimism, okay? My theory is that Jupiter is both pessimism and optimism because Jupiter rules Pisces and Jupiter rules Sagittarius. But it's not pessimism and optimism the way that we see it in our modern society where, pessimism, everything is bad and everything is terrible. And, optimism is like everything is amazing and everything is incredible. Pessimism is saying, okay, things are shit. And I need to just accept that they're shit and I need to just roll with it. And I'm suffering and I need to admit that I'm suffering. And I think Piscean energy, again, Pisces always get called victims or whatever. But in truth, I think Pisces energy is very good at accepting shitty circumstances and saying it is what it is. It's shitty. I feel like a victim. I feel like I'm the victim of my circumstances. Let me just succumb. And a Pisces that is evolved, or an elevated energy of Pisces, would be someone who just knows how to recognize that, but doesn't live like that, isn't living in that perpetual state. But the strength of Pisces energy is that suffering is something that Pisces energy accepts quite willingly, and when it is appropriate. And so similarly with Sagittarius representing the Temperance card, Sagittarius is the energy of optimism. When it's time to say, okay, things were shit for a minute. I suffered. I went through something that really, really brought me to my knees, brought me to rock bottom. But you know what? Now the only way is up. I am still very capable, even though I have suffered. I am able to achieve beautiful, great things. And that's why they say Sagittarians are very ambitious, because Sagittarians always believe that they can achieve more, get more out of life. And I think that's what the Temperance card, but the Temperance card is in a place, both the Hanged Man and the Temperance card are energies of inaction, if you think about it. From the way that I'm seeing these cards right now, both are energies of inaction. They're not about taking action. They're about, with the Hanged Man, it's like, let me hang in here and feel the suffering and feel the discomfort. The Temperance card is, let me sit here and observe. In a way, I think the Temperance card actually represents gratitude as well. But what I'm seeing with the Ten of Cups being here is the Temperance card saying, acknowledging all the things that fulfill me emotionally, acknowledging how even though grief has stricken me, even though I've suffered, yet I'm still here. And even if I need to temper myself and I need to rebalance some things and I need to reorganize some things, yet I'm still here and I'm able to move forward. That's what the Temperance card is really, really showing me here. And so I think the Hanged Man and the Temperance card is pessimism versus optimism, both ruled by Jupiter-ruled signs, Pisces and Sagittarius, right? And then if we go back to the Wheel of Fortune reading that we did, right? The Wheel of Fortune reading, which the Wheel of Fortune is ruled by Jupiter, was all about ascension and descending. Ascending and descending, and it was all about pessimism and optimism and how the two correlate and how your perspective dictates which one is which. So I'm seeing now the Hanged Man and the Temperance card, are they connected to the Wheel of Fortune? And the concept that the Wheel of Fortune is providing us with is further elaborated on with the Hanged Man and the Temperance card, and kind of the Scorpio card, the Death card. The Death card is the moment in between, that moment of nothingness where it's neither pessimism or optimism. It just kind of feels like nothing. But this is, wow, I love this. I really love this. I really love this series. So the Temperance card wants us to remember, I do feel a very strong sense of inaction, and in a way, because I keep being attracted to the two cups going between one another. When you're pouring one liquid from another, it's like one liquid from one cup to another. It's kind of like, yes, there's certain action happening, but you're not taking that liquid somewhere else. You're not moving it somewhere else. It's just one cup to another. And there's something about, actually, I was at the beach the other day, and it's something that I've been doing when I go to the beach and I get in the sea. I play with the water and I kind of move it from one hand to another. And there is something about moving water from one place to another and moving it back and forth. There's something about it that is very relaxing, and there is some sort of equilibrium that happens when you're doing that, right? There's something about action, but action that is not necessarily, how do I describe this? The Temperance card feels like it does represent some sort of initiation or leadership, but initiation to do things that are maybe almost pointless, but they're going to temper you. It's like, it might seem like a pointless thing to do, to stand and pour water from one cup to another repeatedly. But if it is calming your system, you may be calming your nervous system. If it's helping you become more relaxed and more tempered, well, then it's not pointless at all. It actually has a very specific, very important point. Temperance talks about, there's something about healing the nervous system that I'm picking up on. Maybe that could be another message from the Temperance card. Like, maybe there's something about healing a place of nervousness, a place of discomfort through mindful activity, or mindful activity that seems mindless. How many things that we consider mindless are actually extremely mindful? That's another question that I'm being like given through this. How many activities that we consider mindless are actually extremely mindful? The Temperance card is really about rebalancing yourself out of victimhood, out of grief, out of suffering. And when you're doing that, you will need to do so. It kind of makes me think like, in order to get out of a grief-stricken period, in order to get out of period of suffering, maybe the first step is to pick up a hobby. Maybe there's nothing else that you can do but to pick up a hobby and just start knitting or start drawing or start painting. Maybe that's the only thing that you can do. Maybe the first thing that you can do to come out of grief and suffering is to start running every morning. And at first you're like, oh, does this even matter? How is this gonna help me going for a run? But then it's like, it actually does start helping you, and it starts helping you get out of these difficult energies, and builds on your optimism. And there's something about using that initiation and using that proactive energy of doing something. You're doing something. You're not doing something massive. It's kind of like if you are grieving a loss of a relationship, let's say. Maybe you're not getting out there and you're dating people. Maybe you're not getting out there and seeing people yet. Maybe that's not something that you can do yet. That doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like you can do it in a balanced way. But you're saying to yourself, what can I do in a balanced way? Go for a run, or whatever it is. Take up that hobby, whatever it is. And you're tempering yourself in order to be able. Basically, what I'm seeing with the Temperance card is where you begin to get yourself ready to make significant steps by doing something that seems relatively small and insignificant. And in that way, building your optimism. It's like, if I do this small little thing, if I can achieve this small little thing, I am building on my confidence that I can achieve a greater thing. That way, it's like, that's how we build confidence. When we can take a baby step, we then become more confident in taking a leap. And that's exactly what the Temperance card seems to represent here, and how it's speaking to me. But yeah, the Temperance card is really, truly very connected to the Sagittarian energy. And I do want to talk about the truth aspect of the Temperance card a little bit more. This kind of like gentle truth that can almost hurt more than truth coming from someone who wasn't gentle. That also reminds me of like, have you ever said a truth to yourself? Or like, have you ever come to a harsh truth by yourself rather than someone telling you about it? Where you come to a conclusion and you go, damn, that hurts to admit to myself, or that not even hurts, but like that is, hearing this from myself is so much more impactful than like if somebody else said it to me. But damn, it stings a little bit, you know? That's the feeling that the Temperance card is reminding me of as well. It's when you are not berating yourself, where you're not being critical with yourself, but you're telling yourself a truth that you have been avoiding for a very long time, and finally it cuts through like a knife. That's what I'm getting. And that's funny because it's making me think of Iris, the goddess that is mentioned, being connected to the Temperance card. And she's the messenger between heavens and earth. And it's almost like, do you ever feel like sometimes those truths are almost like downloads, or you channeled that truth? It's almost like your guides, or whatever it is you want to, the energies around you, your ancestors, your guides, your angels, whatever it is that you call those energies, channel that truth to you. And so that also makes me think of, you know, sometimes our guides want the best for us. They are trying to temper us. They're trying to help us to, and I'm pretty sure this is Angel Gabriel in the, or it's not, this is not Angel Gabriel, but I'm pretty sure the connection is to Angel Gabriel in this card in the Rider-Waite Smith, because it said here it's both connected to Angel, oh no, it's Archangel Michael, sorry. It's both connected to the goddess Iris and Archangel Michael. So both of them, again, like it said, there's no gender to this energy, this angel. It's meant to represent both. Sorry, I was thinking Angel Gabriel because I thought of the wasn't he the messenger? But I think Archangel Michael is also strongly connected to communications. Anyway, but sometimes receiving those truths, it's like the truth from heaven, the truth from your spirit guides that you've been trying to avoid, you've not been wanting to face, and yet it's here, and there's nothing else that you can do but face. But in a way, you are relieved. A lot of the time when you receive these truths, it's like, uh-oh, like this is the harsh truth and I have to accept it. There's a sense of relief, like, thank God I finally admitted it to myself, because now I can start looking forward. It's kind of like, thank God I finally admitted to myself that I need to leave this job. Thank God I finally admitted to myself that I need to leave this person. Thank God I finally admitted to myself that I have been a bit of an asshole lately. Like, there's that kind of energy with the Temperance card. It's like, thank God I'm not running away and not lying to myself just because I'm suffering, because I'm grieving. Because that's what the Temperance card kind of represents. Just because you're grieving, just because you're suffering, does not mean that now it has to happen forever, that it has to last forever. Because grief doesn't last forever. Nothing does. And the Temperance card is a reminder of that. And in a way, as much as the truth can hurt and it can be impactful in a way that feels very blunt and harsh, at the same time, how relieving. Because truth is relief. When we finally hear the truth, it can be such a relieving feeling. It can be this feeling of like, thank God, even if the truth is something I did not like hearing, even if the truth is something that I am mildly hurt by, or hurt by on a big scale, thank God I finally know the truth, because now I'm set free. Truth will set you free. And I think that's like a big energy with the Temperance card, but it's so nuanced, and there's so many. Also, I'm kind of getting like honesty and truth is the final ingredient. When we're honest with ourselves, we can finally balance ourselves, is basically the energy that I'm getting. And we can finally look to a more optimistic future, because once we have the truth and we integrate the truth, we can look at life from a new perspective and say, yes, suffering is behind me, because now I've gone through the suffering, I've received the truth, and now I can integrate it in order to create a better life for myself in the future. This happy, it allows you to believe in a happy ending, even if the truth that you received wasn't pleasant to hear. So, wow, it kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, like an example I can think of. There's a couple of examples I can think of, but for example, if you've been denying to yourself that you don't want to do a certain career or a certain job, and you've been lying to yourself, no, I want to do this, even though you're suffering in it, even though you're not happy with it, but you're trying to convince yourself that that's what you want to do. At some point, the angel of temperance is coming down and saying, you don't want to do this, and you're suffering, and you're only suffering because you're lying to yourself at this point. And it's because you're kind of stuck in this suffering and victim mentality. And now it's time to come out of it. And you say to yourself, okay, you know what? I'm finally having this realization, this eureka light bulb moment of, oh, I don't want to do this. So now I can take appropriate actions in order to step away from it, because I'm finally admitting to myself, I don't want to do this job. I don't want to do this career. And that, once I admit that to myself, that is allowing me to look to the future and say, well, what am I going to build? What kind of career am I going to pursue? Because until I've admitted to myself that this is not the career that I want to do, I didn't allow myself to fantasize and imagine the kind of career that I would want to do, the kind of job that I would want to go for, that would make me happy. So when we're in our suffering, when we're in, at the same time being in a state of denial, saying to ourselves, maybe feeling like, oh, I'm suffering, but I'm not really suffering, or suffering, but kind of like denying that you're suffering, or suffering and just being like very deeply in that suffering that you're not able to say to yourself, like, it's time to get up and start planning for a more optimistic future for myself. That's when the Temperance card comes in. And it helps us to balance those things out. So, okay, that was a very interesting reading. This Temperance card reading, very, 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 very fascinating. Honestly, very fascinating. I really want to look at the whole concept of humorism a little bit more because of it as well. And just, yeah, overall, what a great experience I've had with this series overall. But yeah, definitely a new way of looking at the Temperance card. And I hope this helped you see the Temperance card in a new light as well. So if you like this reading, do like, subscribe, and comment. Please engage with this video. If you're watching these videos, please do engage with them. I would really love for more people to find them. I think there are people out there that would want to find them and would want to engage with them. So if you can, share, comment, like, subscribe, especially comment, even if it's just to say hello. But definitely share your thoughts, because I really want to see what people are thinking about these cards as well themselves, and what input you can give me. Yeah, I really appreciate you being here, whoever you are, if you're watching this. If you like this series as well, and you want to tip me, you can tip me with the super thanks button at the bottom of this video. It's like a love heart shaped button. And then you can also tip me with the PayPal link. It's in the description box below. And if you would like a private reading with me, or you'd like to sign up to my Patreon, the links for that are in the description box below as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this reading, as I said, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.